UFC Fight Night, Rafael Dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev. Welcome to another prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zahn, I go by Harris as usual. Here at Boxing MMA Picks, we are breaking these UFC fights down fight by fight, giving you the analysis from the betting perspective. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value. We want to let you know which fights you want to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this UFC Fight Night, Dos Anjos versus Fiziev, we are down to 11 fights after a couple of fights got scrapped. At this point, we're looking at 6 fights on the prelims. We are looking at 5 fights on the main card. Let's get right to work with fight number 1 of the prelims. We're looking at Ronnie Lawrence versus Saidyokub Kakhramonov. Ronnie Lawrence had a unanimous decision win over Mana Martinez in February. A lot of consistent movement around the cage from him. Almost kind of has that awkward Dom Cruz style of stand-up. I do like his kicks. I like his calf kick in particular. He's more of a wrestler, though. I mean, you look at his numbers there, relatively small sample size in just 3 UFC fights, but an insane takedown number. Not only at 9+ per fight, but at almost 80% accuracy. What those totals look like is 26 takedowns landed in just 3 UFC fights. So he definitely is a legitimate wrestler. Again, he can land those takedowns. He will find ways to keep you on the ground. Really relentless in that wrestling approach. BJJ brown belt as well, to go along with that chain wrestling that he has. So very legitimate on the ground. And most importantly, his cardio and his pace seems to hold up for the entire fight, despite going for all those takedowns, despite landing all those takedowns, and despite that constant movement that he has on his feet around the cage. Looking at Saidyokub Kakhramonov, on the other hand, he beat Tresean Jones. That was actually on short notice. That was his August UFC debut. Looks pretty patient on the feet, or at least I should say more patient on the feet, fight over fight. Pretty young fighter, so still going to be a little wild. Solid kicks to his game. He does fight from distance. He has a solid jab, just solid hands in general. Definitely landing clean punches if you watch that last fight versus Tresean Jones. He has solid pressure coming forward. Like I said, younger fighter, so there are going to be times where he does swing a bit wild. He could use a little bit more technique in his style, but I'm sure as he continues to age, that's something that he will address in his game. Looks like he has some good ground IQ. He's a pretty strong grappler. 9 wins overall. 4 of them are via submission. It looks like he knows what he's doing down there. If I'm analyzing these 2 fighters and I'm thinking about sort of what has been for them, Kakhramonov gave up a lot of cage time control to Tresean Jones. I think about what that means for Ronnie Lawrence as a fighter who's willing to do that clinch, who's willing to sort of go for the takedowns and wrestle all day. It makes me ask the question whether or not Saidyokub Kakhramonov will give up those takedowns. I think Kakhramonov is live here. We see it's a pretty close fight. Kakhramonov just a slight underdog on this one. And I see why it's as close as it is. Kakhramonov is pretty explosive on the feet, and he has the good grappling to go along with it. But I feel a bit more confident in a fighter in Ronnie Lawrence, who I know will repeatedly game plan around that takedown. I've seen Kakhramonov taken down before. There's no reason for me to believe that Ronnie Lawrence won't be able to land those takedowns. And then, again, on the feet, a lot of movement from Ronnie Lawrence that potentially allows him to avoid the danger, but more importantly, it allows him to sort of set up that takedown game. So I'm looking at Ronnie Lawrence on points here. I think for at least 2 rounds, he's going to be able to control the wrestling or at least win the rounds based on his wrestling. And I don't think that the threat coming back from Saidyokub Kakhramonov is ahead enough in comparison to Ronnie Lawrence to really say he's going to catch one on the feet. So I like my odds here with Ronnie Lawrence. I think skill set wise, he's just the better bet in my opinion. Ronnie Lawrence is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is a really good fight. This is actually a crazy fight to start the card with. This is actually one of the better fights on the card. And I'm actually having a hard time with this fight here because, in my opinion, Saidyokub Kakhramonov, I think that guy's a stud. I think that guy's legit. Dangerous fighter, like Harris hit the points. Yeah, he has a striking advantage here. He finishes fights. He has a guillotine and a rear naked choke on his record. He has finishes. He has heavy hands. He took the O away from Askar, who's in LFA right now, he's a beast right now. Askar. He took the O away when he was 10-0. He beat Trevin Jones. He was up 2 rounds, likely in that fight. 3rd round, he showed the cardio, got the guillotine. So this guy is a legit fighter here. And it's hard for me to pick because I think whoever wins this fight will be the guy to look at going further, because this is a serious matchup, very competitive. I'm going to have to go with Ronnie Lawrence. I'll be quick here. The reason why, as good as Saidyokub is, as dangerous as he is, especially early on in this fight, I think they both have good cardio, but as Harris hit the point, Lawrence is relentless with his wrestling. And I think he's going to be able to dictate the wrestling as the fight goes on, if not at the beginning of the fight. But again, this is a hard fight to pick because Ronnie Lawrence is a stud. Saidyokub Kakhramonov is a stud. Someone has to win here. But I'm going to bank on the wrestling, the control. And Ronnie Lawrence has been improving his stand-up. So he got some knockdowns on his last opponent, Mana Martinez. So it's a tough fight, but I'm going to bank on the wrestling. I think it's legit. This guy does like 9 takedowns. Is it 9 takedowns a fight? Is that his average in like 2-3 fights?
Yeah, so over a 3-fight period, he's landed a total of 26 takedowns.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to roll with that. If he survives that first round, if the takedowns are hard, because Saidyokub has good takedown defense. But Trevin got him down. I'm pretty sure Ronnie can get him down a couple times. So I'm going to go Ronnie Lawrence with the wrestling here to get this win.
All right, let's move on to the second fight of our prelims. We have Kennedy and Nzechukwu taking on Karl Roberson. For Nzechukwu, split decision loss. That was to Nick Nagiramanu. That was back in March. He's a tall, long southpaw. We see he's going to have some glaring advantages in this one. 4 inches in height, which is not too bad, but he's going to have an astonishing 9 inches in reach. For this fight, he has a very long jab, long 1-2 combinations down the middle. Stand-up is improving fight over fight. He'll kind of stalk you down, expect him to control the center, expect him to use fakes and feints along with that jab, or he'll be coming forward. Decent movement to go along with it in terms of improved footwork. I think probably a fault for him, maybe not the most active striker from what I've seen. It kind of comes one shot at a time at times. But again, definitely an improved striker, improved combinations. His punches did look a lot sharper in his last fight. 80% takedown defense on paper, although the ground game, of his opponents have been an issue for him in the past. So I don't know how true that 80% is, so to speak. Karl Roberson, on the other hand, 3-fight losing streak. He lost to Khalil Roundtree. That was back in March as well. Former pro kickboxer, we know this at this point, so he has some pretty good stand-up, patient, methodical type of stand-up, kind of sits back, waits for the perfect time to pick his spots. He's a southpaw as well, so he can get tricky on the feet. Good kicks as well, good striking defense, quick strikes, explosive strikes, pretty crafty combinations. It's a really tough fight for me analytically, because when I think about it analytically, I like Karl Roberson's ability in the stand-up. Bona fide kickboxer amongst these two, and he has shown, a pretty high level of striking throughout his career. That said, I'm actually going to go with Kennedy and Nzechukwu on this one for a couple of reasons. Firstly, for me, Karl Roberson, to me, is not that big as a 205er. I know he has competed at 205 in the past, but he did come back down to 185 for a while before going back up to 205 recently. I just don't think he's the most physically daunting in that weight class, whereas Kennedy and Nzechukwu definitely fills out the division physically. And then again, going back to physically, he has those physical advantages. They're very hard to ignore. 4 inches in height, 9 inches in reach, in addition to a very long jab that he uses. So I can see that reach advantage being extra useful in this one. And really the final reason is because Kennedy Nzechukwu controls center of the ring, whereas Roberson accepts fighting from the outside. We know how that looks in the eyes of the judges, especially lately in the UFC. So there's a couple of factors here that I'm seeing going in favor of Kennedy Nzechukwu. Both of these guys are on losing streaks, so I do expect them both to be hungry. I expect them both to be tactical, play to their strengths, be a little bit more intentional, try not to make as many mistakes. And don't forget, Kennedy Nzechukwu, he lost a split decision in his last fight to Nick Nigurumanu because he had a point deduction in that fight. So maybe he feels like he should have won on a losing streak. I'm sure he's going to want to go out there and prove something. Karl Roberson, I'm sure he's going to be just as hungry. He's a fighter who used to be 9-2. He's now staring at 9-5, potentially 9-6 if he loses this one. So both of these guys are going to be hungry. I can see either fighter pulling it out. But again, more than anything, it's the physical advantages on the side of Kennedy Nzechukwu that makes me side with him. And Nzechukwu is going to be my pick.
Sorry about that. I'm going with Kennedy as well. What's his reach advantage in this fight?
9 inches.
9 inches. And he has much better activity. Karl Roberson hasn't won a fight since 2019. I'm not sure what I'm getting from that guy. I'm not sure if a situation where he's not evolving. Could it be that? He's not evolving after the fights? Because he hasn't won a fight since 2019. He was a good fighter in the UFC. He had multiple wins prior. But it looks like something happened, and either the game is kind of moving too fast for him, or he's not improving in these fights. And in this fight, he's fighting a guy that throws more strikes, a guy that's the bigger guy, that have that big reach advantage. I'm gonna go with Kennedy in this spot here to get this one done. Again, this is a tough fight because this will be a striking fight. So when it comes to these type of matchups, especially the size these guys have and the power they have, it can come down to who just lands first, right? And then once that person lands, they can either finish the fight or the fight can just alter at that point. So when you know it's going to be a striking match where they are both good strikers, it really comes down to who lands that perfect counter or who lands that perfect power shot, significant strike in the fight that will either drop the fighter or knock him out, right? So I'm going to go with Kennedy, but again, this is a tough fight because we know how it's going to be a stand-up, right? And anything can happen, but Kennedy's my pick.
Third fight, another tough one here, Cody Brundage versus Tresean Gore. Brundage beat Dalcha Lungiambula. That was back in March. Pretty decent stand-up, a lot of stick and move. Does keep his hands down, though, so something to be concerned about there. A lot of level changes, a lot of fakes, kind of throws one strike at a time at times, but he does put a lot of weight behind it. For the most part, he's a wrestler, though. We've seen him be out-wrestled before, so keep that in mind. But primarily, he is a wrestler. When he does attempt takedowns, the entries are solid. He can land them. He has decent takedown defense to go along with it. Always important to note, he trains at a Factory X. So you think about guys like Dustin Jacoby, you think about guys like Alex Hernandez and their style of striking. That's something that Cody Brundage tries to emulate in some ways. I wouldn't call him the same level of striker as those two, but again, stylistically, he's sort of attempting to do the same thing with that stick and move type of style. Cardio is a bit of a concern. I have seen him slow down, but I mean, you never know. That could be something that he possibly worked on. Tresean Gore, on the other hand, had a unanimous decision loss to Brian Battle. That was back in February. He stalks his opponents down. He controls center. He has good patience early in fights. Good jab, good power. Pretty explosive. Good striking speed as well. Not active enough of a striker for me. He has shown me wrestling in the regional scene, but I'm not quite sure yet how that translates to the UFC itself. And for that, I mean, I like Brundage. Ultimately, he's shown me more. Really, that's what it comes down to. But to expand on that a little bit, I see him as the more well-rounded MMA fighter. I think he can match Gore on the feet while being able to resort to wrestling. Whereas I look at Gore as being a little bit more one-dimensional as just a striker. I mean, yes, again, he has shown me wrestling on the regional scene, but I really do think about that match that he had versus Brian Battle where nothing was really giving on the feet. I think about that fight. Gore didn't really do enough to win rounds. Battle was fighting from the outside. Battle was more active. Gore just didn't really have any answers. And on top of that, he didn't really make any changes to his game plan. He didn't resort to the wrestling that he has shown on the regional scene. He just sort of accepted what it was. I don't think Cody Brundage is as agile as Brian Battle, but again, I can see something similar with Cody Brundage, his ability to kind of have that stick and move type of style. And then again, you add that layer of Brundage actually being able to resort to wrestling. And again, I just like the advantages that he has in this one. Given Gore's explosiveness, we know that's a threat. We know the power is a threat, of course. But that said, I'm pretty satisfied with Brundage's ability to survive after what he showed me in that Dalcha Lungiambula fight. I mean, he was hurt bad. He resorted to the wrestling. He, ended up wearing out Lungiambula, and then he ended up getting the job done in that one. So he showed me great instinct, good survival ability, good ability to resort to his strengths, and again, game plan around being in a circumstance where he was hurt. So, I think Gore could hurt Brundage, but I'm satisfied with Brundage being able to handle the hurt. Whereas Brundage, I see him as being able to match Gore on the feet for the most part, maybe using his movement to his advantage, and then again, resorting to that wrestling to possibly steal around or to possibly just win the fight overall. Tough one to call. Brundage is an underdog. I understand that, but Cody Brundage nonetheless is going to be my pick. He's just shown me more at this point.
Yeah. Listen, man, after the Ultimate Fighter, I watched that whole season. After I watched the whole season, I was really impressed with this Gore guy. I was like, this guy has the body, the strength to keep it on the feet. And then his boxing looked like it was a bit above the UFC boxing level. It looked like he had some technique, he had some power. And in that fight against Battle, I'm not sure what happened. But again, that's his first fight in the UFC, if I'm correct, right? So that's tough. We know first fight jitters, right? So in this fight, Brundage, even if he could take this down, he could grind him out, but can he wrestle like that for 3 rounds, right? I don't think so. My concern is Tresean Gore is he only has 4 fights, right? So the UFC has to think highly of this guy. They're giving him a legit fighter here that he has a significant advantage in the stand-up. I think Tresean Gore is going to be able to connect here on the feet. I think he has good enough takedown defense, good enough strength, athleticism, just the athleticism to keep it on the feet. And I think his stand-up's going to shine here. I think Tresean Gore gets it done. I think the UFC kind of gave him an opponent that he could look good against, a guy that doesn't have the best wrestling, but has wrestling. But knowing Tresean Gore can defend the takedowns. But again, I wouldn't be surprised Brundage is able to grapple for 2 rounds, win a decision. But I don't think he can do that, right? So I got to go with Tresean Gore. I think eventually the takedowns won't be there, and Brundage is going to be forced to stand with him. And Tresean Gore is not the most active striker. Brundage isn't either. And I just think Tresean's going to have the better shots. And I think he could finish him, but I'm just going to go with Tresean Gore to get the win money line.
All right, 4th fight of the prelims. In that case, we have Antonina Shevchenko versus Cortney Casey. For Antonina, she's on a 2-fight losing streak. She lost to Casey O'Neill back in October, so it's been a while since she last fought. Southpaw on the feet. She's Muay Thai stand-up style. Good Thai clinch to go along with it. She's technically sound. Her approach looks like Valentina in some ways, but her striking prowess isn't quite as there. She does have solid accuracy. She does have solid combinations. She chooses to fight from the outside. She's a pretty decent counter puncher. And she is decent in terms of her ground game. What I mean by that is decent grappling, decent positioning. That said, not a wrestler, right? She can't quite land the takedown. She can't quite keep top control. Her takedown defense isn't the best at only about 52%. So she's not going to be somebody who is a strong wrestler. But when I say she's decent in terms of her ground game, I more so mean her ground IQ, being able to keep herself relatively safe in guard, to, shoot for a submission, things like that. But definitely fighters have resorted to a ground game in order to beat her. I don't think Cortney Casey will be the person to do that. We see her takedown numbers there, very low as well. She beat Liana Jojua back in November. Maybe a bit better than her record indicates. We see her record here, 10 wins, 9 losses. You know, she's taken on really good competition throughout her career. Patient on the feet, decent striking. You know, she shows the jab pretty regularly. She has decent IQ with her combinations. Doesn't really have the best takedown defense either. BJJ brown belt as well. So again, not useless on the ground. You know, she prefers to fight on the feet, but again, she has that sort of ground IQ. So when analyzing these fighters, in some ways, I am seeing similar strengths, similar weaknesses. I think it definitely will be a striking match. I think that, you know, Cortney Casey might just have a little bit more dog in her, so to speak. We know how important that has been in the UFC. Antonina definitely doesn't have that same dog that her sister has. And it makes it really hard to bet for her, regardless of how you feel analytically in any of her fights. That said, Antonina Shevchenko, analytically, I actually like her here in this spot. I like her as the more diverse striker, as the more capable striker. You know, neither fighter is particularly threatening with their style. So that should allow for a point fighting type of match, almost a match that kind of looks like sparring. And in that situation, I can see Antonina Shevchenko being, again, a little bit sharper, a little bit more diverse in her attack, maybe throwing a little bit more combinations, and just sort of edging it out here. But I will say, to me, this is more or less a 50-50 fight. When I see Antonina Shevchenko hovering around minus 180, I can say this is a strong avoid. But in picking a winner, I'm going to go with Antonina Shevchenko to snap her losing streak.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Antonina Shevchenko, like outside of quitting in this fight, because we know that, as you mentioned, Cortney Casey has that dog compared to Antonina. She's more tough, right? But let's be real, right? When it comes to the stand-up, Antonina is a better striker. When it comes to the jiu-jitsu, Antonina might be better. When it comes to the wrestling, Antonina might be better as well. But again, these are cases where Cortney could be better. But whoever's better, it's not by much. But that stand-up, there's a big advantage here. And this is a fight that the UFC clearly is setting Shevchenko up to win here. Because again, Cortney Casey has probably 2 or 3 takedowns in her whole UFC career. And we're talking about, this is spanning how many fights, right? So she doesn't want to wrestle. She doesn't wrestle. And if she does wrestle, how will her cardio hold up if she's never done it before in a UFC matchup, right? So I like Shevchenko here, maybe to survive an early, a bit of early diversity in this fight. And I think as the fight goes on, I think the strikes are going to land. And the better striker is going to show. I think this mostly will be a stand-up fight. So I got to roll the stand-up fighter here in Shevchenko. But again, betting-wise, I'm going to stay away. I can't trust either fighter, but on paper, I got to go with Antonina Shevchenko.
Fight number 5, we have Aiemann Zahabi versus Ricky Turcios. For Zahabi, he beat Draco Rodriguez. That was back in February. Switch stance on the feet, a little unorthodox in his style. You know, his stand-up feels like it lacks direction sometimes. Uses a lot of movement, though. Good punching power to go along with it. Look at his record there, 8 wins. Half of them are via KO TKO. So you definitely have to respect his power. And that includes his most recent fight, again, against Draco Rodriguez. You know, probably too often looking for that perfect shot. He's somebody who can definitely be a more active striker. You know, he never really initiates the offense. Those are kind of issues that I have with him on the feet. He is a BJJ black belt, but we don't see him actively trying to take the fight to the ground. You know, very low takedown number there, even lower takedown accuracy from that perspective. When the opportunities present themselves, you know, he definitely shows a high level of IQ, definitely shows, you know, that he's very agile in clinch situations and in grappling situations as well. But again, expect him to be a stand-up artist and expect him to kind of look for that perfect shot rather than really have an active type of stand-up. Ricky Turcios, on the other hand, beat Brady Heastand back in August. That was via split decision. Striking's okay. Decent calf kick. Hands are a bit wild. He can put combinations together. I think his stand-up is much better when he is coming forward. He will shoot for takedowns. Has a solid clinch to go along with it. If he is taken down, he has a pretty decent guard. He will try to do some work off of his back. He will try to scramble, get back up. Kind of a hustler, so to speak, in the ring. Ricky Turcios. He definitely gives you a pace and tries to sort of frustrate his opponents. I don't know what it is about Ricky Turcios, but just doesn't offer much for me at this UFC level, though. I know he won the Ultimate Fighter. I know he beat Brady Heaston, but I don't know. I mean, his style to me is more predicated on that high pace, on that constant pace. But I think Aiemann Zahabi can use that against him to land that fight-changing punch. In the same way that he was able to do in his last fight versus Draco Rodriguez. Ricky Turcios does have a lot of heart, seemingly has good cardio. So to me, it's very possible that he just sort of wills his way to victory, split decision type of thing. Otherwise, I'm looking at Aiemann Zahabi as the more dangerous of the two. And again, almost taking advantage of Ricky Turcios' pace to land that fight-changing punch. I'm almost sort of relying on that happening. So I'm looking at Aiemann Zahabi to get the job done here. I mean, really, for me, more than anything, Turcios just doesn't do it at this UFC level. So I don't know if I'm missing something, but I don't quite see it. And I don't see him getting the job done against Aiemann Zahabi. So I'm going to go with another underdog, the Canadian Aiemann Zahabi, to get the job done. Would not surprise me if he knocks Ricky Turcios out.
Yeah. Yo, leave it on this screen, the screen you have it on. Leave it over there. Because I want to focus on some things here. The reach, right? The reach is going to be a big thing. Turcios moves around really awkward in that ring. Awkward style. He throws a lot of stuff. Harris, I'm with you, man. I don't like this fighter, man, at all, man. Like, I didn't like him on the Ultimate Fighter. This guy's awkward, man. But this guy is the type of guy that he can go out there and beat a decent fighter like Daniel Argueta, who put up a good fight against who recently put up a good fight against what's that guy, man? Mace. Let me pull it up here. Damon Jackson. Okay, so he recently had a good fight with Damon Jackson. That was a good win. And then he had another win on the Ultimate Fighter against Ludwig Sholinin. These are two grapplers. He was able to keep it on the feet. He had much better stand-up than both fighters. But he looked sloppy. He got hit a lot in these fights. Another grappler he got. So he fought 3 grapplers in a row. Brady Heaston is another grappler he fought. And he was able to keep it on the feet and kind of show that he has a better striking in those fights. But in those fights, he got hit, man. And his stand-up looks really, really sloppy. The heart is there, like Harris indicated. His activity is there. That can steal him rounds. But I can't make a pick with that guy. I'm not going to bet this fight. But I can't pick Ricky Turcios. I think at least Aiemann Zahabi is UFC level. Good counters. Ricky Turcios style is tailored to a fighter that can counter. This is going to be the first guy that has good counters in a while that Ricky Turcios has fought. He's fought mainly grapplers, and the last guy that had good counters was Mana Martinez, and he got knocked out in 3 minutes, right, in that fight. So I think Zahabi can do the same. I think it's going to be something similar to that. He's going to come in with his awkward style, and I think he's going to land Zahabi. And don't forget, Zahabi's brother is one of the best trainers. So Zahabi definitely had the training partners needed for this fight to get prepared. He's going to have the right game plan. He's going to stick to the game plan. It's a tough fight to pick because Ricky Turcios, they want him to win here. If it's a close fight, they're going to give him the decision. But I can't pick this guy, man. He doesn't look good in there at all. So I'm going to go with Aiemann Zahabi here to do what he has to do. And he might get some wrestling going, right? So Turcios does not have good takedown defense. It's kind of weak, right, physically. So Zahabi might be able to get some takedowns as well. So I'm going to go Zahabi here, having more ways to win the fight.
All right, final fight of the prelims, Cynthia Calvillo versus Nina Nunes. Calvillo lost to Andrea Lee back in November. She's actually on a 3-fight losing streak now at this point. Decently reliable in the stand-up, good head movement. Expect her to fight coming forward. Expect regular activity from her. She is able to pick up the pace when needed. Surprisingly good strength for this division at flyweight. And she has that neutralizer, which is the wrestling, with pretty good grappling to go along with it as well. Nina Nunes, she's a striker. It's been over a year since she last competed. She lost to Mackenzie Dern back in April 2021. Solid counterpuncher. She fights from the outside, decent striker in general. But her striking almost reminds me of like a Cowboy Cerrone in some ways, in that it's decent, but it's not overwhelming. Good amounts of fakes and feints, but there's not a lot of activity at times. Also doesn't really have the best takedown defense. Her last two fights, her opponents kind of exposed that and used that specifically to win on the ground. Keep in mind, Nina Nunes is moving up in weight for this fight, up to 125. That is important to note. It's also important to note that Cynthia Calvillo has been beaten up pretty badly in her last two fights. It makes you question her toughness and sort of her heart lately. But I don't think Nina Nunes coming up in weight, along with her style, can do that same type of damage. Ultimately, I think Calvillo is a bit more solid all around without that threat coming back on the side of Nunes to hurt Calvillo. And I think that'll be key in this fight. I also think Calvillo can resort again to those takedowns in what I assume will be a strength advantage for her. And again, that hunger factor. You always have to think about a fighter, coming off a few losses in a row. She's on a 3-fight losing streak. She was very high ranked in the flyweight division at one point. She's going to look to get back in the win column. And I think Nina Nunes is the perfect opponent to get that done with. So I like Cynthia Calvillo in this spot. I would feel a little bit more confident if Calvillo didn't get beaten up so badly in her last two fights. But nonetheless, analytically, I like Cynthia Calvillo in this spot.
Yeah, let's be real, man. Albeit she got beat up in those last two fights. Those are against some killers, right? Those are against some killers. So we gotta factor that in as well. And in this fight, like you mentioned, Nina's moving up in weight. So Cynthia is gonna have the strength advantage that she hasn't had in a while, or she should have on paper. Again, we don't know until they start grappling. But just being the fighter that's normally fighting bigger girls, Cynthia Calvillo, I think that Cynthia's gonna be able to dictate kind of how the fight goes. Whether she wins the way the fight goes, that's another thing. But I think this is gonna be a grappling. I think she's gonna make this a grappling match. And I think she's a better grappler than Nina Nunes with the size as well. And she's on a 3-fight losing streak. I think this is a fight that the UFC is kind of setting her up. She was in there with a killer before that's looking to hurt you. Nina has good striking. Nina has good takedown defense. But I think it can just be a situation where Calvillo's getting takedowns and she's just staying on top and just winning the round. I think she can get the takedowns here. So I'm going to go with Cynthia Calvillo to get it done, because I think this is a step down for her. And I think UFC is kind of setting her up here to get back on track.
Moving on to the main card, let's move on to the first fight there. We have Michael Johnson taking on Jamie Mullarkey. Michael Johnson got back in the win column after beating Alan Patrick. That was via KO TKO back in May. We know the Michael Johnson script at this point, still an excellent boxer, I should say. Still has good striking, still has quick hands. He's a southpaw, still has good movement. Not really the best at stop and takedowns, although, pretty good at sprawling, right? He's actually 78% takedown defense on paper. He has a good aggressive sprawl, but, good takedown artists don't really have a hard time finding their way to the mat against him. We know that he's had a lot of problems with submission attempts as well, as sort of a clear path that fighters have taken to beating him. Jamie Mullarkey, on the other hand, lost to Jalen Turner in March. Moves around a lot in the stand-up, decent jab, good head movement, good level changes, serviceable stand-up. His boxing combinations definitely look improved. His calf kick looks better. His striking defense is starting to pick up a little bit as well. Good power. We see his record there, 14 wins, 10 of them are via KO TKO. And he's a wrestler on top of all of that. Eventually he's going to shoot for the takedown or clinch against the cage. He averages just over 3 takedowns a fight, just over 30% accuracy. This is over a 5-fight UFC span. So, some legitimate numbers there. I can see good exchanges on the feet happening in this fight, with Michael Johnson, of course, getting the better of those exchanges. But Mullarkey definitely having his moments. We saw it in the Jalen Turner fight. There were times where, Mullarkey had clipped Turner. Turner just happened to be the better, tougher striker in that fight. And no shame there, of course, after what Jalen Turner was able to do to Brad Riddell. Back to Jamie Mullarkey, stand-up has improved lately, but ultimately we know the clearest path against Michael Johnson is to take the fight to the mat. And Jamie Mullarkey has shown the ability to do so. It's not really a high confidence fight here, because Mullarkey likes to stand up maybe a little bit too much at this point, and Michael Johnson can definitely hurt him on the feet. But I see Jamie Mullarkey as having some more key advantages in this fight. And again, really just a better overall path to victory here. I understand why he is as sizable as an underdog as he is. In some ways, Michael Johnson is sort of more of a puncher's chance than anything else. But again, keep in mind, Mullarkey looks improved in the stand-up, likes the stand-up, and we know Michael Johnson is at a very high level there and can hurt anyone. So I would say be careful and sort of watch out for that. Otherwise, I'm looking for Jamie Mullarkey to get in close, clinch, land a few takedowns, and sort of seal some rounds up that way. Jamie Mullarkey is going to be my pick for this one.
Yeah, I'll be honest, man. This is a hard fight. This one, you gotta be careful with, man, because at the end of the day, Michael Johnson, you can go through his losses, right? He legitimately lost to Clay Guida. Thiago Moises, he was schooling him. Stevie Ray, they both had their moments in that fight. Josh Emmett, he's schooling Josh Emmett till the last round. Darren Elkins, he lost that fight, got submitted, but he was looking good early. Justin Gaethje, he had Justin Gaethje really, really hurt in that fight. He fought Khabib Nurmagomedov. Those are the losses. Nate Diaz, Beneil Dariush, a split decision. Mullarkey's not on it. He's on Clay Guida's level, but aside from like Clay Guida, Stevie Ray, he's not on these guys' levels, man. And I think this is a fight that Michael Johnson can actually can win here. I think he can keep it on the feet. Has the better stand up here. I think he gets it done because a lot of times he's fighting guys that take him down and submit him. Mullarkey can submit him, but Mullarkey is not really known for that, right? So I think that Michael Johnson could defend the submissions and eventually gets back to his feet. I think takedowns will be harder at that point. I see Michael vetting this out, man. He's a veteran, man. I think he wins this fight. So I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to go with Michael Johnson showing the better stand-up. I think he's just he got his last win as well. That helps. And I just think in this fight, I think he has good takedown defense, keep it on the feet. And I'm not really high on Mullarkey. I think that he can eventually connect, and I think he can hurt him. So I'm going to go Michael Johnson to get this one done. And don't forget, he's only been finished by strikes from Josh Emmett. Again, a fight he was winning till the last, and then he got knocked out. And Justin Gaethje, another like two of the hardest hitters in the UFC, right? Pound for pound, right? Those are the guys that finished them, right? So I'm not sure Jamie Mullarkey can do that. So I'm going to go with Michael Johnson to pull this one off.
Second fight of the main card, we have Jared Vanderaa versus Chase Sherman. Low-level fight here. Jared Vanderaa is on a 3-fight losing streak, losing to Alexei Oleinik back in April. Improved as a striker, but still a bit slow, sturdy. He can definitely be hit. Definitely has a chin, though. Has that toughness factor to him. He does look a bit better with his movement. He continues to come forward, continues to stalk you down. The striking looks improved with a slightly better jab, a slightly regular usage of the calf kick, slightly improved as a counter striker. And, the numbers don't really support it, but he'll go for the takedown. He'll make it dirty against the cage if needed. Terrible takedown defense, however. Chase Sherman, on the other hand, 4-fight losing streak. He lost to Alexander Romanov back in April. Decent overall stand-up, likes that leg kick as part of his combinations and his exchanges. Combinations are clean, they're diverse, doesn't overswing, keeps things pretty controlled, doesn't really have the best striking defense, really no head movement, and doesn't really offer much in terms of a ground game. Like I said, very low level fight here. You know, anything can happen. On top of that, it's a heavyweight fight, so it has that heavyweight beware label attached to it. Any one of these guys can can land a fight changing punch. Jared Vanderaa is more likely to be that person. Again, with Chase Sherman's lack of striking defense, in addition to Jared Vanderaa really just being the bigger guy, you know, outweighing him by 20 pounds. Sherman, however, might be the better overall striker. Again, I think Vanderaa just has that dog in him a little bit more. Neither fighter has a ground game on top of that, but Vanderaa probably more willing to make it close and dirty. So I say all of that to say this. I think on paper, analytically, you got to go with Jared Vanderaa in this fight. But with all that said, like I said, literally anything can happen in this fight. And my gut really says to just go with Chase Sherman on this one for a win. This is one of those fights I strongly want to advise betting on. These are one of those fights where I almost don't even have a legitimate reason as to why I'm going with Chase Sherman. Really just a gut pick more than anything. Analytically, I like Vanderaa, but somehow I'm ending up choosing Chase Sherman. Sherman's going to be my pick, but avoid this fight at all costs.
Yeah, this is a bad fight, man. I can't believe they're making us watch this fight on the main card. This is crazy. But again, I'm going to go Jared Vanderaa to get this done. I just think the size is going to be a difference. If both guys aren't good fighters, it could be a matter of who's bigger. And Jared Vanderaa, to me, can take better shots. He's a tougher guy. He's the dog in this fight. And I think as the fight goes on, Jared Vanderaa has shown he can go to 3 rounds, no problem. Chase has shown that he has cardio problems as the fight goes on. And if Chase can't finish him in that first round, I can see Jared just getting it done as the fight goes, right? These are bad fighters, right? So you don't want to really, you can't really bank on another guy, but Chase, I think, is gone. I think after he loses this fight, he's out of the UFC. I think Jared gets it done.
Moving on from a few bad fighters to a few good fighters. Third fight of our main card, we have Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Said Nurmagomedov. For Said Nurmagomedov, he beat Cody Stamann back in January. Good lateral movement, good striking. It's a high-level, diverse striker with a good calf kick, good high kick, good spin kick, good combinations, and a sneaky counterpuncher as well. Being Dagestani, you got to be very confident in his wrestling ability as well. Doesn't bring the fight to the mat. His takedown numbers, they're very low, less than half a takedown per fight. But again, he has really good wrestling ability. He has really good takedown defense. And I mean, again, even though he keeps the fight standing rather than resorting to wrestling, he has shown that he can be a strong wrestler, a strong grappler as well, and just really be threatening in those positions when he has to be. Douglas Silva de Andrade beat Sergey Morozov back in February. He's solid on the feet. He's a Muay Thai kickboxer. A lot of feints in his attack, very explosive. Doesn't really do a good job at setting it up, though. His offense could use a bit more activity, could use a bit more, again, setup punches rather than always just going for it with the big explosion. Good kicks, though. And he has a good ground game. He has good grappling as well. Neither of these guys land takedowns. So despite how good they are on the ground, both of them, which I believe they both are pretty solid, this fight should stay on the feet. This to me is one of those fights, and I find myself in this situation in a lot of UFC cards where I feel like the favorite is simply at a higher level despite how solid I feel the underdog is. I think Said Nurmagomedov's striking is a lot more advanced. I don't think Douglas Silva de Andrade is going to be able to get the fight to the ground if the stand-up is not going his way. And I anticipate the stand-up not going his way. Don't forget that Sergey Morozov was able to hurt Douglas Silva de Andrade on the feet in what could have been a fight-ending uppercut. It shows that Douglas Silva de Andrade has a style that can be beat on the feet. Again, I think Said Nurmagomedov will be able to capitalize on that. And I don't think Douglas Silva de Andrade will be able to have an answer for it. This is probably my favorite pick on the card. Again, despite how good Douglas Silva de Andrade is, he is solid. He is game. He is a pretty solid opponent. But I think Said Nurmagomedov, again, is just at a higher level, maybe across the board at this point. So Said Nurmagomedov is going to be my pick. Again, like I said, probably my favorite pick on the entire card.
Yeah, Said, man, this guy's good, man. He's not related to Khabib at all, but they know each other. He fights a lot different. He fights kind of like Zabib, with that high level striking, that flashy striking style. But he does have the wrestling. He can grapple, and I've seen him grapple before the UFC. This is a pretty straightforward fight. Said is going to move around. He has good footwork. He's going to outstrike Andrade. If Andrade cannot land that big blow to hurt him, this is going to be a clear-cut win for Nurmagomedov. So I'm going to go with Said to get it done here. I think it's clear-cut here. Andrade needs that knockout. Let's be real. He needs that knockout in this fight. He's not going to be able to grapple this guy to victory. If he doesn't get, and he's not going to win a decision striking because he's going to be the one taking more strikes. So if he doesn't get the knockout, he's going to lose. And Said fought Ronnie Barcelos, right? So this guy can take a shot. So I'm going to go Said here to get it done.
Fourth fight of the main card, also the co-main event of the evening. We have Caio Borralho versus Armen Petrosyan. Pretty good fight here for Borralho. He beat Gadzi Omar Gadziev back in April. Southpaw, light on the feet, karate-style striker, throws a lot of kicks. Has a very long jab. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage in this one, despite being several inches shorter. Good movement, good striking accuracy. He can be explosive as well. Also a good counterpuncher, just with that quickness that he has, that quick in and out movement. Good on the ground as well. He has good grappling. He has, really good top control. He's been training with Damian Maia for years, so that his grappling is definitely legitimate. He finds ways to end up on top of you. Obviously, a very small sample size in terms of contender series as well as UFC appearances, but 2 takedowns per at 80%. It shows you that, again, he just finds ways to end up on top of you. He finds ways to take control of your back. He finds ways to kind of lay and pray, or again, control your back for an entire round, keep the opponents down, drain on them with a body lock. Just different sort of crafty ways to win rounds. And again, he has the stand-up to go along with it. So Caio Borralho is actually a really, really solid overall fighter here, solid upcoming prospect in this middleweight division. Armen Petrosyan, same thing, very solid as a prospect in this middleweight division. He had a split decision win versus Grigory Rodriguez back in February, and we know how good Rodriguez has looked. He's introduced as a kickboxer. He's strong on the feet, good in and out movement, crisp striking, fast striking as well. Good kicks, good combinations, good power. He can also fight pretty well from the outside. One glaring thing to keep an eye on is that he doesn't have the best takedown defense, just 37%. And we have seen fighters pretty effortlessly be able to land takedowns on Armen Petrosyan. A good matchup on the feet here. Different styles, but I think both guys can have their moments in the stand-up. However, the ground advantage it's too glaring for me. Borralho, to me, is much better on the ground. Again, may not be the strongest wrestler, but like I said, he finds ways to get on top of you. He finds ways to control the round on the ground. And again, Petrosyan doesn't have the best takedown defense. It's really bad. You can't ignore it. Petrosyan, of course, legitimate knockout threat. Look at his record of 7 wins. 6 of them are via KO, TKO. But I think Borralho's ability to fight from range, to use kicks, to have that 4-inch reach advantage with that long jab, I think for the most part, at least early in the fight, Caio Borralho will be able to avoid that power. And then again, like I said, if he can bring this fight to the mat, that round is all but over. Armen Petrosyan, again, is a knockout threat and has the ability to get the knockout. But I like the advantages here for Caio Borralho, and I like his response to the power that Petrosyan would bring to the table, again, with that movement, with that range, and just sort of with that craftiness and that karate style. So Caio Borralho is going to be my pick in this one. Wouldn't surprise me if either fighter won, but analytically, I actually feel pretty good about Caio Borralho in this one.
Yeah, this is a crazy fight. This is striker versus grappler, but Caio Borralho can strike as well. But Armen Petrosyan, he's legit, man. His brother is probably a top 3 kickboxer of all time. If you're following kickboxing, Giorgio Petrosyan. This guy is like 100 wins and like 2 or 3 losses. This guy's a beast, right? So that's his brother. So these guys both have the same trainer. They both came up the same way. Armen Petrosyan is the younger brother. He's the bigger guy, though, and he's skilled. This guy has 92 kickboxing fights. This guy, and if you want to really compare that, that's comparing to Alex Pereira. Sorry, was that his name? Pereira, who just knocked out Strickland. He has 40 fights, right? So this guy has more experience than Alex Pereira in the kickboxing area, and he actually has a better record as well, right? So this is gonna be a tough fight. This is a tough fight, man. But I'm rolling with you. I think Caio Borralho is special. I think the middleweight division is gonna be put on notice here. I think he's gonna march up the rankings here in this division. That grappling game, that stand up, that package, he has that full round game here. He's gonna take him to the mat, might submit him. But one thing about Armen Petrosyan, yeah, he won his last fight, right? Against what's that guy's name? Rodriguez, the Beast, RoboCop, right? He won that fight. And if you would think that Caio is similar to that, right? Like where RoboCop is like Caio, they both have that really good grappling advantage and they both can strike. But the difference is the cardio, is that Caio can do that for 3 rounds, no problem. RoboCop can do 1 good round of wrestling and then he kind of gets tired, right? So it's not the same type of fight. I see Caio Borralho using his grappling. He's going to take this to the mat. He's not going to strike with this guy. He's not a dumb guy. He wears glasses, so you know this guy's really smart. And I think the IQ is going to be a factor in this fight. I think he's a really smart fighter, and I think that eventually this guy's going to, like everyone's talking about Khamzat, Chimaev, and all these guys, Shaq, they're legitimate fighters. Rakhmonov was like a Shavkat, Rakhmonov, legitimate guys. But I really think Caio Borralho is in that conversation as the next guy's coming up, and that could be our problem in the division. In that 185-pound division, I think he's a bad match for a lot of these guys. So I think Caio Borralho gets it done, man. And they're saying he's 5'10". There's no way he's 5'10", right? So he's at least 6 foot. So the height difference is not as much as that Tapology is trying to say. So I like Caio Borralho. The size is not going to be a difference, and he's going to go straight for the takedown. Smart fighter. And Armen's not going to get up. All right, so that's how I see the fight going.
Main event of the evening, Rafael Dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev. Really good matchup here. Dos Anjos had a unanimous decision win versus Renato Moicano back in March. At this stage in his career, still very capable on the feet, still sharp, movement still good. We know that he's best when he's coming forward. We know that he has good striking diversity. He's a southpaw on the feet, good fakes, good feints, good kicks, sharp left straight as well. He can land that takedown, almost 2 takedowns per fight. Plus, he has a BJJ black belt to go along with it, so we know he's a high-level grappler. He averages almost 2 takedowns per fight, like I said. He landed 5 of them in his last fight, so definitely a legitimate part of his game that he still resorts to. Biggest probably advantage for Dos Anjos is that he definitely has 5-round cardio, whereas for Fiziev, there's still some question marks there. And I mean, ultimately, just a well-rounded veteran, still very capable of putting on a high-level performance. We saw he beat Renato Moicano pretty badly. Again, just, still a great competitor. Rafael Fiziev, on the other hand, is on a 5-fight win streak. He beat Brad Riddell back in December. Really good MMA stand-up, really good boxing, high-level Thai kickboxing. He's competed in a number of Muay Thai fights at the highest level. Powerful kick to the body, good head movement, good combinations as well. Definitely one of the best strikers in the UFC right now. I think that goes without question. Good ground game, despite only half a takedown per fight. Good top position when we've seen him in those positions. Good activity, good positioning to keep his opponents down. I think more importantly, he has 95% takedown defense, which of course will be important in this fight. It's a good fight. It's a good challenge for both fighters. I think both of these guys could have moments on the feet. However, I look at Rafael Fiziev as being the higher level striker here. No shame there. Rafael Dos Anjos is still good in that regard. RDA might be the better grappler, but I don't think he'll be able to implement it. I think Fiziev, again, just that takedown defense is too good to allow the fight to get there. Or maybe we'll see how good it is. We'll see if it is really good. I also think Fiziev, I can't say has a wrestling advantage, but I would have to say that, I don't think any one of these fighters is particularly better in the wrestling category, or if one of them has an advantage, it can't be a big one. I think that just gives sort of further point to nullifying the grappling advantage that I think RDA has. And more importantly, I think that further nullifies the thought of this fight really going to the mat. Again, pairing along with Fiziev's takedown defense. Fiziev could make this fight fairly easy if he continues to come forward, like he did in that Brad Riddell fight. I say that because RDA is not really that effective fighting off of his back foot. He's a lot better fighting coming forward. Otherwise, again, I'm looking at a fight with, similar strengths, similar abilities between these two guys. But in general, I like Rafael Fiziev here, regardless of some of the question marks that might occur. Again, most importantly, this being a 5-round fight. I think it's Fiziev's first 5-round fight, if I'm not mistaken. But I like Fiziev here, regardless. I think age has a lot to do with it. 29-year-old in his athletic prime, and Rafael Fiziev, high-level striker, versus a naturally declining 37-year-old RDA. I mean, RDA, again, looked good in his last fight, but, how much can the body hold up at 37 years old versus a 29-year-old that is at just as high of a level in terms of his overall game? Again, I think the only thing on the side of RDA is this being a 5-round fight and maybe RDA winning the championship rounds as well as maybe one of the first 3 rounds. I can see that legitimately happening. But otherwise, I like Fiziev here. Fiziev possibly hurts RDA. Otherwise, 5-round striking match. I think Fiziev gets 3, maybe 4 of those rounds. Rafael Fiziev ultimately is going to be my pick in this one.
Yeah, this is a tough one, man. Like, I was going back and forth, even before when they previously booked this fight. What I look at in this fight is Rafael Dos Anjos has gone 5 rounds, no problem. This guy has good cardio, right? And he's going down to the 150, or he's in the 155-pound division, not the 170, where he's going to have a size advantage. He's a different fighter in this division. And he's going to have the grappling advantage, the wrestling advantage, in my opinion, against Fiziev. Fiziev is hard to take down. But Fiziev has shown that in the 3rd rounds, he's kind of looking tired, right? So against Bobby Green, against Mark Diakiese, even against Alex White, in those fights, he won the first 2 rounds, or he looked good in the first 2 rounds. And in the 3rd round, he lost those rounds on the judges' scorecards, right? So this is the guy that gasses out. But now in his fight versus Brad Riddell, he kind of looked good in that fight, where he went 3 rounds. He got a finish in the 3rd round. So it looks like he's working on his cardio. It definitely looks like it, but 15 minutes and 25 it's a big difference. So it's hard for me to really feel confident with Fiziev, because I can see Fiziev winning the first 2 rounds, just like Armen Tsarukyan won the first 2 rounds. But then I could see the next 3 rounds being close. Even though I thought Armen Tsarukyan did enough to win that fight, I could see the next 3 rounds being close, where the judges really, they're not really good at their job, right? So they can get it wrong, is what I'm trying to say, right? Ultimately, though, I landed on Fiziev. I think he has the takedown defense. he has a big stand-up advantage. This guy has 50 kickboxing fights. And if he keeps it on the feet, he should be able to win the first 3 rounds and survive the last 2, right? But again, this is a tough fight because he hasn't gone 5 rounds before. And I can see the later rounds, Fiziev having an issue, but there's a good chance Fiziev finishes Dos Anjos in the first 2 rounds, right? So you can't forget that Fiziev is a finishing machine. So I want to go with Fiziev to get it done. You can either knock him out. I think he has more ways to win. I think he has a chance to win a decision here, winning the first 3 rounds, or even just coming to the fight with in good shape and having good cardio to go the 5 rounds. I think the only way he loses is if his cardio is not to par. So I think that's what Dos Anjos needs to bank on. So I think based on that, I think Fiziev has more ways to win. So I'm going to go with Fiziev to get it done. But yeah, to me, this is a tough fight.
All right, so let's take it to Vegas. Let's see how we feel on the betting lines. Let's of course start with an underdog in terms of which underdog we maybe feel has the best shot at winning. What direction are you looking in?
What do you got? What are the underdogs today?
All right, so I'll list them out. We have Saidyokub Kakhramonov versus Ronnie Lawrence. We have Karl Roberson versus Nzechukwu. We have Cody Brundage versus Tresean Gore. We have Courtney Casey versus Shevchenko. Aiemann Zahabi versus Turcios. Nina Nunes versus Calvillo. Michael Johnson versus Mullarkey. Chase Sherman versus Vanderaa. Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Nurmagomedov. Armen Petrosyan versus Borralho. And RDA versus Fiziev.
Okay, I'm going to roll with Aiemann Zahabi.
Aiemann Zahabi. All right, so there's a plus 150. Pretty healthy underdog. And I agree with that in a lot of ways. Again, Turcios is just not that guy. At least I don't see it. So plus 150, good value on Zahabi there. My underdog pick actually will be Cody Brundage. That said, again, Tresean Gore may have just been first fight jitters, but that first fight really turned me off from him and his style. So Cody Brundage will be my underdog pick for this card. And in terms of some parlay action, which fights are you considering piecing together?
All right, I'm looking at Caio Borralho.
Yep.
And Said Nurmagomedov. What does that pay?
That would pay basically a double up, a 1.97.
1.97. Okay. And let me see here. Let me throw in let me leave it at let me leave it like that.
All right. So in that case, again, pretty much double up. $100 will return $196 in total. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return $492. I will say that my favorite ticket essentially was going to end up on the exact same thing. Caio Borralho, Said Nurmagomedov, and I said to myself, I'm just going to leave it at that. I wanted to provide a bit more of a gut pick as well into the mix, but I am cautioning the third fight that I'm adding is a bit more of a gut pick, whereas the confidence is really coming in the first 2 fights, as you've already mentioned them, Caio Borralho and Said Nurmagomedov. But the third fight I want to add to that is Rafael Fiziev. Again, main event, big moment, and just a big time fighter. That would
Okay, since you're throwing that one, let me throw in Ronnie Lawrence.
Okay, so going back to your parlay in that case, Ronnie Lawrence, that would make that a 3.40. So $100 will return $340, $250 will return $850. And again, going back to my parlay with those 2 fights, but Rafael Fiziev as the third fight, that would make that a 2.84 in terms of the payout. $100 will return a total of $284. And for our bigger bettors, $250 would return a total of $711. So let's officially sign off on that note. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, We want to hear from you in the comments. Make sure you comment down below, of course. And yeah, let's leave it at that. UFC Fight Night, Rafael Dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev. Full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. As usual, he goes by Zahn, I go by Harris, and in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's do it.